ever essentially means as it's always been.
People I feel most sorry about are the trolls who their hopes are just built and built and built. And it's like, yes, 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 yes. And then it doesn't happen.
And if you followed me since 2014 with the TIG, you know I've always loved cooking and crafting and gardening.
Today, Harry and Meghan torched what little was left of their relationship with the royal family and what little was left, frankly, of their own reputations.
It's so weird, and it's just like there's music playing over it. It just is so bizarre. There's nothing deeper to this. It was an entirely pointless exercise.
So it's no surprise to people who work in Buckingham Palace. They saw and witnessed all this here.
When is Meghan Markle going to file an invasion of privacy lawsuit against this woman, or is the lawsuit only for her own father?
Now, you'll be thrilled to know that Meghan, who is our favourite person, has shared a never-before-seen clip from her Netflix show.
It is literally the exact same type of scenario. What's different here? Oh, wait, yes, this one is a publicity stunt.
This also follows all the stories about her bullying staff over here in the UK.
The dysfunctional Duchess who couldn't, she says she runs businesses, the woman couldn't run a bar.
Which is unresolved. NDAs stopped all that stuff coming out. She bullied people in a very unpleasant way over here.
They moved from England to get away from the scrutiny of the press, and all they do is try to get in the press in the United States.
Inevitable divorce will be a hellish car crash in slow motion for Prince Harry.
Viewer discretion is advised. This clip contains weapons-grade hypocrisy.
We've all heard the whispers about the no eye contact rule, how staff were allegedly forbidden from locking eyes with Meghan and Harry in the palace's echoing halls. But that jaw-dropping rule was just the opening note in a symphony of demands that, insiders say, turned royal life into something more like a celebrity retreat than a kingdom of centuries-old tradition. Staffers claim it wasn't merely a matter of etiquette. It was a list, a growing list, of rules so oddly specific and meticulously enforced that some wondered if they were living in a palace or a Hollywood set.
Now that mansion is worth $20 million. That'll be divided down the middle, if Harry's lucky. By the way, then there are the security liabilities for the foreseeable future. Now, their security costs are estimated to be $3 million a year.
Because beyond that chilling no-eye contact mandate, there was reportedly a coded system of lights and bells, a hush-hush signal that screamed, "Do not disturb," without a single word being spoken. One insider described the system as a fortress mentality, a way for the couple to build walls of absolute privacy even within the palace gates. And that was just the beginning. Juice bars flown in daily, no matter the location or the cost? Check. Personal sushi chefs chartered to whichever residence they were staying in? Allegedly, yes. The couple's demands, according to staffers who lived it, went far beyond dietary preferences. They read more like a VIP wellness contract than anything the palace had ever seen.
So it's showing us actually working with her beehives. I could see that, but this was just useless.
And so is that a good thing for you in a way that there's so much interest in you?
No, there's definitely not a good thing.
And that's exactly what some found so astonishing, the sense that tradition was being upended by what one source described as celebrity-level control. Celebrity-level control. As the rumors spread, staffers say the atmosphere shifted. No longer were they simply caretakers of royal custom. They were suddenly facilitators of Meghan and Harry's personal world, a world of wellness rituals and silence orders, where even small talk was off limits unless the couple themselves initiated it. And yes, there were even whispers, some still spoken in hushed tones, about matching pajamas for staff. Coordinated sleepwear, in a palace that had once been a fortress of stiff collars and ancient customs. Staffers described a sense of whiplash, palace grandeur one moment, orders for organic airlifted breakfasts the next.
Meghan hasn't chosen to ditch private jet flights. She simply can't afford it at the moment, can she? She doesn't have enough mugs who are prepared to waste all that money.
Centuries of tradition met a kind of California cool wellness regime that, some say, felt completely out of place. It was like Buckingham turned Malibu, one ex-butler reportedly quipped. And it wasn't just the staffers talking. Word has it that even senior royals were left privately shocked, worried that these demands were more than a quirky indulgence, that they were a quiet, unspoken challenge to everything the crown stood for. So what's really on this full list of royal demands? Today, we're peeling back each layer of rumor and revealing the alleged rules staff say left them stunned. From personal chefs to forced hush, these aren't just petty requests. If you believe the whispers, they were power moves that turned royal life upside down. Get ready, because what's coming next might just change everything you thought you knew about Meghan and Harry's royal chapter. Let's start with the so-called do not disturb codes.
She has many times utilized her friends in order to leverage their private jets. I feel like that's half of her friendships are, do you have a private jet or not? Oh, great, I'm your best friend now.
The signals staffers say were more than just a polite request for privacy. According to multiple palace insiders, Meghan and Harry allegedly devised a system of bells or lights that flickered on when they didn't want to be bothered. No words spoken, no questions asked, just an unspoken order that echoed down the gilded corridors. For staff, it was an eerie switch from the usual polite knocking and whispered announcements that had defined royal life for centuries. One former attendant claimed the system felt like it belonged more in a luxury resort than a palace steeped in protocol. It was like we were there to serve, but only if they deemed us worthy of entering their space, the staffer allegedly told a friend. Another source put it more bluntly. It created a sense of separation, like we were intruders in their world. Because in a palace that once ran on a carefully orchestrated ballet of etiquette, where a nod, a pause, quiet footfall said more than any modern device, this hush-hush code felt like a glaring neon sign. And it wasn't just about avoiding interruptions. Rumor has it these do not disturb signals became a silent but powerful assertion of control.
And I'm sure even though she might have complimented the flight attendant, given her a quote-unquote sweet note, I'm sure the entire time Meghan was thinking, oh gosh, I hate every single second.
Staffers claimed they felt like they were on constant alert, tiptoeing around rooms they'd once moved through with quiet confidence. One butler reportedly admitted it was like living under a red light, constantly guessing if you'd be welcome or if you'd be turned away. But the real intrigue wasn't just the flickering lights or the hush-hush whispers. It was how these codes reportedly played into a larger pattern. Because if you believe what staffers are saying, this wasn't just about Meghan and Harry wanting a little peace and quiet. It was about carving out a kingdom within the kingdom, a space that felt entirely their own, insulated from both tradition and scrutiny. Some staffers say they understood, even empathized. After all, the royal fishbowl is relentless, but others found the signals jarring, even insulting. It was like the staff were ghosts until summoned, one former chambermaid reportedly confided. We were there, but we weren't allowed to exist until they needed us. What's most telling is how these whispered rules seemed to spark a quiet rebellion. A few staffers allegedly began to push back, testing the boundaries, risking a curt word or a cold shoulder. Because in a household defined by deference, these codes felt like a line in the sand. Who held the power, and who would stay silent? So, while the world was still reeling from the no eye contact rule, behind those palace doors, staffers say they were already living in a new reality. A world where a flick of light or ring of a bell could close them off completely, and a world where the next rule was always just around the corner.
Of being served by just somebody who serves anybody in first class. You know, I'm the Duchess of Sussex. That's 100% Meghan's thought process.
Stay tuned, because what we're about to uncover next takes the palace from a kingdom to a stage set, where even the kitchen was part of the performance. And speaking of performance, let's talk about what palace insiders have dubbed the juice bar obsession, a wellness ritual that staff say became a daily performance in itself. According to multiple staffers, Meghan and Harry allegedly demanded organic juice bars stocked with the freshest produce, flown in if necessary, no matter where they were staying. It wasn't just a passing request. Sources claim it was a constant expectation that staff had to meet, regardless of how far it stretched traditional royal hospitality. One insider put it this way: it was like the palace kitchens had to pivot overnight from centuries of banquets and formal dinners to become a cold-pressed juice factory. There was this constant pressure to keep up with the couple's wellness rituals. Staffers who'd spent years perfecting the art of a formal tea service were suddenly faced with requests for turmeric shots and green juice blends, allegedly sourced from exclusive wellness companies Meghan favored. But it wasn't just about the drinks themselves, it was the symbolism. To some, it felt like a quiet revolution happening inside the palace walls. The ancient silver teapots and gilt-edged menus pushed aside for mason jars brimming with kale and ginger. One source even called it a collision of worlds, like Buckingham had become part of California overnight. And while some staffers reportedly found the change amusing, even refreshing, others felt it was yet another sign that tradition was being trampled under a wellness regime that didn't quite fit the mold.
So Harry will be on the hook for the security of himself, obviously, his children, and he'll be paying for Meghan Markle's security long after they have parted ways.
It wasn't just about the juice, one former butler allegedly said. It was about showing that Meghan and Harry's needs were the new center of the universe, even if it meant rewriting centuries of kitchen rules. Behind the scenes, there were whispers of frantic calls to organic farms, panicked deliveries at dawn, and staff scrambling to find the perfect shade of beetroot for the next detox shot. Some staffers claimed they were up at all hours, juggling palace banquets and wellness deliveries that had to be perfect down to the last slice of lemon. It was to them a new form of royal theater, where the stage was the breakfast table and the script was always changing. And of course, not everyone in the palace found this daily performance charming. One former staff member summed up the general sentiment in a single scathing line. "We'd spent years learning the choreography of a royal breakfast service, only to be told we were doing it all wrong, because someone wanted chia seeds in the middle of Buckingham Palace." But if you think that was the strangest twist in this royal drama, you're in for a shock. Because the next chapter of these alleged demands takes us from fancy juices to something even more surreal. Sushi chefs flown across oceans just to serve dinner for two. Stay with us, because this story is only getting wilder. And if the daily juice bar requests felt extravagant, the next alleged demand takes luxury to a whole new level. Flying sushi chef saga. Staffers say Meghan and Harry's passion for fresh sushi was so unwavering that they reportedly had a personal sushi chef on call, flown in for private meals wherever they happened to be. Yes, you heard that right, chartered flights and all, just to satisfy a craving that apparently couldn't be met by the palace kitchens or even London's finest restaurants.
Two sources say a colleague with ties to Archetypes, her podcast, took a leave of absence after working on 3 episodes, then left Gimlet, the podcast producer, altogether.
One insider who claimed to have witnessed this culinary charade described it like a scene from a 5-star resort, not a royal residence. It was like Nobu, but with corgis in the background, they allegedly said, half laughing, half disbelieving. To hear them tell it, the scene was surreal. Centuries-old portraits looking on as delicate tuna rolls and wasabi were served in a hush of ceremonial precision. Staffers were used to coronation banquets and state dinners. But this was a brand new script. And yet, according to those same insiders, this wasn't just about food, it was about control. Every bite, every plate, every meticulously crafted roll was a statement that the couple's desires took precedence over the age-old rituals of the palace. It felt like a quiet declaration, one footman reportedly said, that their world, their preferences, were what mattered now, not the weight of tradition. Not everyone in the palace was thrilled by this spectacle. Some saw it as an indulgence that flew in the face of the monarchy's carefully cultivated image of duty and restraint. One former butler allegedly quipped, "We're not in a pop star's dressing room, we're in a palace. Or at least we used to be." Behind the scenes, staffers scrambled to keep up with the demands, juggling ancient silver service with the precision of Japanese cuisine that required a level of detail most had never encountered. Whispers spread through the corridors of how much these trips cost, and whether it was truly necessary to fly a chef across oceans when the palace already had some of the world's most talented culinary staff. But that's the thing about rumors. They thrive in the gaps left by unanswered questions. And as staffers murmured about these late-night sushi sessions, another truth seemed to emerge. These meals weren't just about taste. They were about staking out a separate identity within the palace.
Several others described taking extended breaks from work to escape scrutiny, meaning from her, exiting their job or undergoing long-term therapy to working with Meghan.
One roll at a time. And so, while the world was watching for signs of a royal rebellion, staffers say they were living through one, played out in secret dining rooms behind closed doors. But this sushi saga was only one dish in a feast of bizarre rules. Next up, coordinated pajamas that turned palace corridors into something out of a surreal dreamscape. Stay tuned, because what's coming next might be the strangest rule of all. And just when staffers thought they'd seen it all, along came what they now call Pajamagate. A rule that turned the palace's hallowed halls into a scene straight out of a children's bedtime story. According to whispers from within, Meghan and Harry allegedly wanted staffers to wear matching pajamas during overnight stays. Yes, matching pajamas. Coordinated sleepwear for the royal household staff, as if the palace had swapped centuries of tradition for a luxury sleepover aesthetic. Some insiders say they found it oddly charming at first, playful twist in an otherwise stiff environment. "It was like a pajama party in Buckingham Palace," one former chambermaid allegedly quipped, but others were appalled, seeing it as a surreal overreach that blurred the lines between royal formality and celebrity whims. After all, these were staff who'd spent years perfecting the bow, the perfect table setting, the respectful distance, and now they were allegedly being asked to slip into color-coordinated loungewear on command. One insider described it as a moment that crystallized the staff's growing unease. We weren't just employees anymore, they said. It felt like we were props in some private fantasy, part of a curated lifestyle brand, not a royal household. Staffers who'd served monarchs and heads of state found themselves trading crisp uniforms for matching flannels, their dignified silence replaced by awkward glances in the mirror as they tried to find their size in the stacks of sleepwear. And, of course, this wasn't just about pajamas, it was about what those pajamas represented. A complete shift in palace culture.
Nobody set out to destroy you. You destroyed yourselves in this country with your ludicrous, hypocritical behaviour. Truth be told, what she just said is complete and utter garbage.
A moment where the couple's personal comfort and vision reportedly took absolute priority over centuries of protocol. It was the final straw for some of us, one ex-footman allegedly confessed. We'd always known the royal household was about service, but this felt like a costume party at our expense. Rumor has it that the pushback was immediate and fierce. Some staffers flat out refused, citing dignity and tradition as their reasons. Others played along for a time, only to find the pajama charade grating on their nerves. A nightly reminder that things were no longer as they once were. We're not here to play dress-up, one maid allegedly told a colleague. We're here to uphold a legacy. And that's what made Pajamagate more than just a quirky anecdote. It became a symbol, a soft, flannel-clad symbol, of the tension brewing beneath the surface. A world that once ran on centuries of deference was now bending to the whims of two people who, if you believe the rumors, wanted to rewrite the entire script. But that script didn't stop with sleepwear. Next up, staffers say, was a rule that took the wellness craze to a whole new level, transforming palace rooms into personal yoga retreats, as if the ghosts of Windsor were about to join a downward dog. So stay tuned, because the next chapter is where palace walls truly met the California sun. As if matching pajamas weren't enough of a spectacle, staffers say the next demand was even more surreal, the yoga studio shuffle. According to palace insiders, Meghan's love for yoga turned entire rooms, once reserved for dignitaries and royal audiences, into private sanctuaries of downward dogs and child's poses. And it wasn't just a matter of laying down a mat or two. Staffers whisper that entire rooms were allegedly cleared out, furniture moved at all hours, as Meghan's wellness rituals took precedence over centuries of palace grandeur. One former butler reportedly described the transformation as like turning a stately suite into a Lululemon showroom overnight. Chandeliers twinkling above yoga blocks, priceless paintings glowering as staffers swapped antique chairs for bolsters, and aromatherapy candles.
No, the world's biggest victims right now are the Duke and Duchess of Netflix. And don't take my word for it.
It was a collision of worlds. The starchy hush of the British monarchy meeting the airy mantras of a Malibu yoga retreat. Insiders say these impromptu makeovers often happened with little warning. Staff would be summoned in the dead of night to rearrange entire suites, their usual poise slipping in the flurry of pillows and rolled-up rugs. It felt like we were living in a constant state of flux, one staffer allegedly recalled. One moment you're serving a formal dinner in the room, the next you're lighting incense for a vinyasa session. And while Meghan's passion for yoga was no secret, she'd spoken about it openly in interviews. Staffers claim the scale of these overnight transformations left them dizzy. One source described how they had to quickly learn the difference between a half-moon pose and a headstand, not because they were expected to join in, but because they were expected to know exactly how to support Meghan's practice without a word out of place. Not everyone found it charming. Some insiders reportedly felt these yoga studio demands were another sign that the palace had become a canvas for the couple's personal whims, no matter the cost. It was like Buckingham Palace was just another backdrop for a lifestyle brand, one ex-maid allegedly said, and while staffers scrambled to accommodate the new wellness rituals, some worried about what was being sacrificed in the process. Because in a palace that had always been a symbol of tradition and continuity, this constant remodeling felt jarring. Each candlelit stretch session became a quiet battle between the weight of history and the cult of personal comfort. And though staffers kept their complaints to whispers, behind those murmurs was a sense that things were unraveling faster than anyone could have predicted. But if you think the yoga studios were where this ended, think again. Staffers say there was another rule, one that silenced not just their voices, but their very presence. Stay tuned, because the next chapter is about more than whispered rumors. It's about a code of silence that left even the most seasoned palace veterans stunned. Just when staffers thought the palace couldn't feel more like a set for a wellness influencer's highlight reel, another alleged rule emerged, one that insiders say went straight to the heart of royal decorum, the silent service.
This promise Once you're married, don't worry, it'll get better. Once they get used to you, it'll get better. Of course it'll get better.
According to those who claim they lived it, Meghan and Harry reportedly insisted on a strict code of silence. Staffers were told not to engage in any casual chit-chat, not to dare speak unless spoken to first. It was as if centuries of polite small talk and careful pleasantries were suddenly out the window, replaced by a Hollywood set-style hush. One former staffer described the atmosphere as like working in a library where the books were alive, watching your every move. No polite inquiries about the weather, no warm banter that once made the palace feel like a living, breathing place. Staffers say it was a line drawn in the plush carpet, a boundary that told them they were there to serve, nothing more. And if that code of silence wasn't enough, sources say Meghan and Harry allegedly took it a step further, staff phone lockdown. According to multiple insiders, certain events, especially those with VIP guests, came with a strict order: hand over your phone or face the consequences. It wasn't just about privacy, one staffer reportedly said. It was about total control of the narrative, who got to tell the story of what went on behind those closed doors. The phone lockdowns, staffers claim, left them feeling like they were living under a permanent cloud of suspicion. Phones were no longer tools for their work, but symbols of potential betrayal. It was like they thought we were all waiting to sell them out, one ex-maid allegedly confessed. It changed everything: how we moved, how we spoke, even how we thought about our jobs. Insiders say these silent service and phone lockdown policies sent shockwaves through the palace's well-oiled machine. Staff who'd once prided themselves on quiet excellence now felt the silence was a command, not a courtesy. And that command, some say, felt like it was about more than just privacy. It was about control, about shaping an image so tightly that not a single slip could escape.
But truth be told, no matter how hard I tried, no matter how good I was, no matter what I did, they were still going to find a way to destroy me.
One former butler summed it up like this: it wasn't just a job anymore. It was a performance, and you didn't dare forget your lines. And behind the scenes, staffers whispered that this code of silence was part of a larger pattern, a pattern that turned the palace from a place of tradition into a fortress of personal demands. But while these hush-hush rules might have left the staff feeling muzzled, they were just one piece of the puzzle. Because there was another clash brewing behind those stone walls, a battle between old-world heritage and a wellness-obsessed vision that some say was airlifted in on a cloud of almond milk and microgreens. Stay with us, because what comes next is where the tension between tradition and transformation finally bursts into the open. As the palace staff navigated the hushed commands and phone lockdowns, another alleged demand pushed the culture clash to its breaking point: the organic breakfast airlift. Rumor has it that Meghan and Harry's wellness rituals didn't stop at green juices or sushi chefs. They reportedly went so far as to order entire organic breakfast spreads, flown in fresh, even if it meant bypassing centuries-old palace customs. One insider said it best: it was like we woke up one morning and Buckingham had become a California spa retreat. Staffers who'd spent years mastering the art of an English breakfast, polished silver toast racks, steaming pots of Earl Grey, found themselves tasked with sourcing plant-based yogurts and fruit flown in from exotic farms. And not just once, but again and again, as if the weight of history was no match for a macrobiotic craving. According to these staffers, it was a moment of quiet rebellion against the palace's stiff dining traditions. The usual menus, steeped in heritage, were pushed aside for dishes that spoke more of Malibu than monarchy. One former butler allegedly quipped, "We'd gone from centuries of royal tradition to airlifting and chia seeds overnight." Yet even as some staffers admired the couple's commitment to their lifestyle, others found themselves questioning just how far this wellness wave would go. It wasn't about healthy eating, one ex-maid reportedly said. It was about showing that their vision, this very specific, very curated world, mattered more than anything else.
So much of what Meghan is and how she is, so similar to my mum.
Even the monarchy. The friction was undeniable. Staffers say the daily grind of ensuring these organic feasts were perfect, down to the last pomegranate seed, took its toll. Deliveries arrived in the early hours. Kitchens that had once prepared state banquets now scurried to accommodate these exacting orders. And while staffers tried to maintain the palace's famed discretion behind the scenes, they whispered about the cost, both in money and in the slow erosion of a tradition they'd spent their lives upholding. One long-serving footman, allegedly, summed up the unease like this: "We were no longer guardians of the crown's legacy. We were personal shoppers, making sure the latest wellness craze had everything it needed to feel at home." And in those whispers, another fear took hold. The monarchy itself was becoming a backdrop for an ever-changing personal brand. That each organic breakfast served was another sign that the old ways were slipping away, replaced by a vision that didn't quite fit the golden frames and velvet halls. But if you think this tension ended with almond milk cappuccinos and tropical fruit, you're in for a surprise, because staffers say the pushback to these demands didn't just simmer, it boiled over. In the next chapter, the staff's quiet grumbles turn into open resistance, and the palace itself becomes a battleground. Stay tuned, because the real clash was only beginning. As these demands piled up, no eye contact rules, personal juice bars, overnight yoga sanctuaries, staffers say the atmosphere in the palace shifted from bewildered compliance to something more defiant. The quiet deference that had defined their roles for decades was cracking under the weight of constant last-minute changes and wellness whims. Insiders claim this was the birth of what some now call the staff revolt. At first, the resistance was subtle, an eyebrow raised in the corridor, a polite but pointed question about whether the palace was really meant to be a luxury retreat for a private couple. But soon, the pushback became harder to ignore. One insider described it like this: "We'd spent our lives perfecting the art of royal service, learning every bow, every silver placement, every detail of the household. And suddenly we were being told to dress in matching pajamas and fetch dragon fruit at midnight."
Having known both women, Princess Diana and Meghan Markle, I can say with absolute certainty they had nothing in common whatsoever. I couldn't think of two women more different.
For some, it was the final straw. Rumor has it that the pajama rule was the first to spark genuine mutiny. Staffers who had long accepted the palace's strict dress codes reportedly bristled at the idea of wearing coordinated sleepwear on command. "We're not part of a fashion show," one ex-maid allegedly told a colleague. "We're here to serve the monarchy, not someone's Instagram aesthetic." Behind the scenes, quiet complaints turned into whispered alliances. Staffers who'd once never spoken out of turn found themselves comparing notes, trading stories about midnight sushi orders, yoga candles that arrived in bulk, and breakfast airlifts that seemed to mock the palace's timeless rituals. They say that over time, the mood turned from reluctant compliance to open frustration. And it wasn't just about matching pajamas or phone lock boxes. According to multiple insiders, it was about a clash of values: tradition versus transformation, service versus spectacle. Some staffers saw themselves as guardians of a legacy that stretched back centuries. Others saw the demands as a sign of something deeper, a desire to reshape the palace into a personal kingdom, even if it meant tearing down everything that had come before. One former butler allegedly put it best: the tension wasn't just about the rules, it was about who got to write them and what that meant for the future of the crown. Sources say that staff began to push back more openly, questioning new rules, refusing pajama orders, and quietly reminding the couple that the palace had always been bigger than any single set of demands. But behind every whispered rebellion was a bigger fear, that this was only the beginning of a transformation that could leave the monarchy forever changed. Because in the final chapter of this drama, staffers say the clash wasn't just between them and Meghan and Harry. It was a ripple effect that reached the very top, where even senior royals were left reeling, and the future of the crown itself felt suddenly uncertain. Stay with us, because the final act is where it all comes crashing together. And so we reach the final chapter in this swirling palace saga. A chapter that insiders say left even the most unflappable royal watchers wide-eyed. Because according to those who claim they saw it all unfold, the ripple effects of these alleged demands didn't stop at staff corridors or private chambers. They reached the very heart of the monarchy, creating a palace divided in ways that some say hadn't been seen in living memory. Whispers from within speak of senior royals who were privately stunned, not just by the specific demands, but by what they represented. The personal sushi chefs, the juice bar mantras, the hush-hush phone lockdowns, they weren't just about comfort. Some in the family, they hinted at a new, self-created hierarchy. One insider reportedly said, "It wasn't just Meghan and Harry changing palace life. It was Meghan and Harry redefining what palace life was meant to be." And that, insiders claim, was the real fracture. Because for centuries, the monarchy has been built on an unspoken contract, a blending of personal identity with ancient ritual, of private desire with public duty. But these demands, staffers allege, tore at that balance. They say the palace's golden glow flickered under the weight of late-night room swaps and chia seed airlifts. And for some senior royals, the sight of staff in matching pajamas wasn't just bizarre. It was a warning sign that tradition was no longer sacred. It was a turning point that staffers say fed into the growing rumors of Megxit, a point where the private and the public clashed so spectacularly that there was no turning back. And as these demands piled up, the monarchy's carefully polished image began to feel fragile. "We all felt it," one insider reportedly confided. This wasn't just about wellness or lifestyle.